Well, good evening. Welcome to OpenMicVO. And OpenMicVO is an hour that we set aside on Sunday evenings to get together as a community and talk about issues that impact voice actors. Tonight, we're going to be talking about commercial work, anything to do with commercial work. So whether it is getting commercial work, it's performance questions, anything at all to do with commercials is the topic for tonight. I want to mention that OpenMicVO is brought to you by World Voices as part of the World Voices outreach program. World Voices is the largest association of voice actors in the world that I know of. And you can get more information about World Voices at world-voices.org. A couple of ground rules to go over before we get started. First of all, I want to ask you to please keep yourself muted, keep your microphone muted at all times, unless you're actively participating in the conversation. I don't want to dissuade you from unmuting yourself and having something to say or adding to the topic at the time. But if you're not actively participating, if you would keep yourself muted, that would be awesome, because then we don't have problems with feedback and echo and background noise. To mute yourself and unmute yourself, there's a little microphone icon in the lower left-hand corner of your Zoom meeting window. So just click it to mute yourself, click it again to unmute yourself. Second thing I want to mention is that OpenMicVO is recorded and we post it to YouTube, just in case you want to go back at some point in the future, have another listen. Totally cool. But I want to remind you that once things get posted to YouTube, we don't have very much control over where that ends up. So please just keep that in mind should you be sharing any information tonight that might be proprietary or confidential. Just remember that it does get posted to the great World Wide Web. Third thing I want to mention is that we're all professionals here, and some of us are in the profession longer than others, but if you have taken the time on a Sunday evening to invest an hour in OpenMicVO, then you're taking this seriously. And we want to make sure that everybody on the call, no matter whether you're new to the business or whether you are a 20-year veteran, that everybody treats everybody else with the respect that they deserve as a fellow professional. So please, let's keep things positive and forward-looking. We don't want to start any flame wars here. And the fourth thing I want to mention is that there'll be lots of advice and opinions expressed tonight. Just keep in mind that that anything that I should say or anything that any of tonight's participants should say isn't necessarily a viewpoint that is approved or has been vetted in any way by World Voices. So just remember that the advice that you get tonight is just that advice, and you should always check things out and research before making any decisions about your career. So with that said, we got a bunch of participants on. I'm going to start unmuting people, and once you see that you're unmuted, you can do one of two things. You can either be the first to start off tonight's conversation about commercial work, or please mute yourself. Please do one of those two things. This takes me a moment because I have to do it one at a time. Quite a few of us on tonight, which is awesome. Glad that so many people are here participating. It just means that it takes me a second to unmute people here. Once again, once you see that you're unmuted, Please feel free to get us started with the first comment or first question about commercial work, which is our topic for the night. Okay, we got most people unmuted now. Who wants to start us off with the first question or the first comment, first observation about commercial work?
Hi, my name's Kate, and
hey, Kate, how you doing?
I'm doing well. This is the first time that I've had the chance on a Sunday actually to get on with the WOVO group on Sunday nights. My question is regarding commercial, and I'm more or less new at this. You know, I've always been told the commercial voice needs to be like the natural, friendly neighbor and that, but I'm still hearing the announcer style voice and sometimes, you know, the real slick voice. And I wonder what other people's experiences are with that.
That's a great question, Kate. So basically, you know, we keep getting told by our coaches and by other voiceovers that the conversational, non-announce is where things are at from a commercial standpoint, but yet many of us are still being called upon to do very commercial or very announcer type voices. What's up with that? Who's got some comments on that?
This is James in New Jersey. I think it depends on the copy, and it depends on the advertising agency, and it depends on the client and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of things that we have no control over. They may say in a spec something like not announcery or something like that, but then there is a market for that kind of thing. There's also a market for the goofy kind of thing that isn't real at all. I mean, it depends on what the client is looking for.
You know, James, do you think that there's some breakout here between kind of regional and local work versus national work? Do you find that the smaller commercial projects sometimes tend to be more announcery in style, like local radio spots?
That's kind of a hard call because I'm working in a big market in New York City. So I don't work regionally, but when I do hear regional commercials, like for New Jersey on cable or something like that, for the regional kind of things, it's usually their nephew or their niece or somebody that a family member or somebody that they kind of hired because the client liked them or something like that. And they're not really actors. They're not really voice actors. They're just sort of real people. And it's one of those things where I've had a lot of auditions on camera things too, where first of all, the casting people say, we want real people, we don't want actors. And then a week later, they'll come back and say, we couldn't find any real people, we need actors.
Who else has got a comment on this, contradiction between conversational and non-announce being the trend that we keep hearing about, yet often we get called upon to do announce type reads?
Hi, this is Brad Highland in Maryland. I've noticed both. I mean, I think when you listen, I listen to commercials since I've become full-time VO. Commercials are better than the TV shows now. I listen and repeat and learn, and I hear announcer stuff and I hear conversational stuff locally and nationally. So it's really just, as the other gentleman said, it just depends on what they're looking for. And I think as voice actors, I mean, it's good to be able to really hone in and be good at one thing, but I think you need to be able to do both, if you're going to get work.
Fair point. I think that that hits it on the head, is that that versatility is necessary, because there are national spots that have quite strong announcer style reads, and then there's a lot of local spots that are quite conversational in nature. So,
Hi, Graham. It's Bev.
hey, Bev.
How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hi, everybody out there. My thought on the commercial take right now is they went from announcery to everything. They wanted conversational, except the script 90% of the time is like introducing, which is not how we speak. Then they went into that I don't really care too much attitude, millennial. I don't have time to put a lot of thought into this, but if you like the product, then get it kind of read. And then they went from that. I'm hearing more and more this, I want to call it conversational, and it is, but it's even a more laid back read. It's just it's like a laid back announcer. It's kind of a new read altogether. So what I would recommend everybody to do is when you get a chance to audition for a commercial, provide them with two very different reads, one a little more announcery and one not. And if they say conversational, give them a really conversational read, and then give them one that's more fitting to the script they've written. And they might hear what they're asking for isn't being written, but they'll know you can do a conversational read, so you might get hired anyway because of that.
Yeah, I'm always I always giggle a little bit when I get these scripts that, you know, they're asking for a conversational read, and it's the most ridiculous salesy script that you've ever run across. And it's like, you can't make that sound conversational. It's just, that's not what anyone would say in a real conversation. So,
Well, then there's also the other extreme where there's a national automobile car commercial running right now where the guy is just whispering so intently that this is what you want in a car. You know, but that's not announcery and that's not real.
yeah, there still is an affectation. You're absolutely right.
There's a female one out there where they go the H factor. It's like, don't like that either.
Patricia makes a good point. On this topic of the announcer voice, maybe it's time for us to come up with a more contemporary way of saying announcer. Is that, you know, authority sound maybe is what she's suggesting as a replacement for announcer, because, you know, hey, the old school announcer, you know, the pukey sound is definitely, I mean, nobody wants that unless you're actually doing a parody of it. So, but maybe this whole idea behind authority sound, you know, that makes sense to me to just change up our terminology so that there's a new term for that non-announce but announce, a non-announcey sounding announcer.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
Check.
I was just wondering, I know it was mentioned before that you could do 2 takes when auditioning for a commercial, a conversational style and a more announcery style. Would you recommend sending the 2 takes together?
Bev, I think it was you that mentioned that. Do you want to tackle that?
Sure. Hi, by the way. Yes, I would absolutely send them together unless you're asked not to. And a lot of times they don't want you to slate. So don't hesitate if you're able to name your file and then add 2 takes. Anywhere you can get that information to them is beneficial. But absolutely, slate in one tone, read the first time in a different tone, and then go to that, you know, default second read. So you can get both reads. You know, if you're allowed to slate just your name, read your name differently than you're actually going to read the script and then read a second take.
Hey, Bev,
Mm-hmm.
would you, in your
Hi, Brad.
experience, if you were, hey, how are you? Long time no talk. Ha,
I
ha.
know.
If you, I have in the past, if I'm sending in a commercial audition and they don't say don't slate or do slate, sometimes rather than slate, I'll just say at the front, here's 2 quick takes. The first one is conversational and the second one is, you know, I just describe it quickly. Do you think there's a problem with doing that?
If they say don't slate, I'd say yes,
Okay.
because they said don't slate.
No, I said if there's no description about slating at all, do you think there's any danger in saying 2 quick takes, first one is conversational, second one is blah, blah, blah?
My theory on that is if you're going to do 2 takes, I go, here's 2 quick takes. Here's 2 takes.
But do say, here's 2 takes.
Why?
So they know there's 2 different ones.
Yeah, if you have the opportunity to say that, sure, so that they know to listen. I don't think you need to describe them. Let them hear the difference.
Sure.
And it takes less time to say 2 takes than 2 quick takes, first conversational, they've already gone next.
Yep, right. That's but that's what I wanted to know, is that you think it's okay to
if you're allowed to slate, if there's no restrictions, sure.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Bev.
And by the way, hi Graham. I heard that.
Hey, Graham.
Hey, Dave.
Nice to see you back. Nice to hear everybody. Long time, too long in my opinion, but you're the grand maestro. So,
well, thank you so much for your kind words.
Hey, my pleasure and well deserved. You know, when I listen to the national stuff and I hear the differences, to me, and you brought up a good thing, is that most people writing scripts, they have no clue what they're doing, and conversational is just like they just don't want a polished delivery. But to me, when I'm listening to, and that last comment about the commercials are more interesting, of course they are for us, but I'm listening for something that really cuts through, because you listen to it all the time, and when my ears perk up, oh, nice VO, that's a nice delivery on that spot, that's the one that appeals to me. I think the danger for casting people is conversational, and there's no energy in it. There's no expertise in the read, and it gets lost in the mix. And the one example that I'll offer right now that really has cut through the mix to my ears is a Canadian talent, and she does the bleach sponge. It's a brand power spot. I think that's the client, and it's a bleach sponge, and it's a fairly traditional read that she does, but it just cuts through, and she's a longtime Canadian talent, and you wouldn't guess her. They made her up into a kind of a housewife thing, but her delivery cuts through, but it's a much more traditional delivery. So that's the way I judge, is it effective? Conversation, you should be able to do both. But to me, when I hear, and it's on in the background like everybody else, regardless of compression and tricks and things like that, does the read cut through? That to me is the gauge of, is it effective?
I got a question for you, Dave. Talking about cutting through. When you are doing commercial reads versus narrative reads, if you're doing an e-learning narration, do you use different equipment? Do you use different microphones or anything like that? And does anybody else out there use different equipment based on the type of read that they're doing?
Yes and no. I've done 12-hour audiobooks with a vintage SM7, and partly because of the situation of the recording, it did a nice job of blocking out some stuff. But in general, I would handle most of that in processing, perhaps. I'd save that after the fact. But generally, for me, I have the ability to do it, and I have a nice locker of mics, but in general, I will stick with the same microphone.
What do you use generally, as just out of curiosity?
TLM 103. Yeah. I can Rode NT1 sound like a U87. It depends on your setup in your room, but those are my go-tos. The TLM 103 and the Rode NT1. That's just my voice. Of course, everybody uses it differently.
Yeah. Absolutely. Anybody else out there use a different mic for commercial work than you do for narrative work? Okay, I'm going to go on the assumption then that everyone's using the same mic for most of their work, which is interesting. I do change up mics on an occasional basis for not so much for commercial versus narrative, but for promo versus my commercial stuff. I'll use a different mic. So just curious if anyone was using different mics for commercial work, just talking about cutting through.
I have an NT1000. It's about 20 years old Rode,
Yeah.
and I use that once in a while if it needs to be like a really gentle. I turn the gain way down because it's so sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
It has a warmer sound, but my go-to for everything is the 416, and I like it. I like it for everything. Plus, I can travel with it easily. So if I book a job while I'm away, I can
Absolutely, yeah. That's the nice thing about the 416 is you can take it anywhere.
Yeah.
Hey, Graham.
Yes, Graham.
You mentioned that you switch your mics. Which do you use for which?
I use a 416 when I'm doing promo stuff or stuff that is a little edgier. And then I'll use a Neumann when I'm doing most commercial and pretty much all narrative work. And I do that for two reasons. First of all, is that the Neumann is far more forgiving of me moving around as I'm speaking. And in narrative work, sometimes that's unavoidable. You can't kind of just stick your head in one place and rigidly not move. Versus the 416, which is rather unforgiving if you move off axis. So the 416 is useful, but I find, but generally only for quite short reads, like 30 seconds. Does that make sense?
Brilliant. Thanks.
Well, brilliant, I wouldn't go that far, but as long as it made some sense to you. Who else has got a question for us tonight? Anything about commercial work, getting commercial work, performing commercial work?
Hi, Graham. It's Bev again. I have one question.
Hey, Bev.
Why, when I watch television, do I see so many commercials that I never see auditions for? How do you get those spots? And are they all union?
I think that is 80% of the answer to your question right there. Is that, the one area that the union, whether it's SAG-AFTRA in the US or ACTRA, Bev, here in Canada, the one area that they've managed to keep their claws into and keep under union jurisdiction fairly carefully is national TV and regional TV. So I think that is why you find so much stuff on TV that, wow, I would have been perfect for that. Why didn't I see that audition? It's because you're a non-union talent and they're going to union talent.
The other side of that is amazing to me is when I see a really good national ad that I read for and thought I did this amazingly great job, and then I watched the commercial and the guy that did it is like, that guy was better than me. Damn it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a little bit humbling, but also makes me a little bit hungrier, and that lets me practice a little bit more.
Brad, you make a great point, is that, sometimes I'll hear an ad that I read for and I'll go, what were they thinking? My read was 5 times better than that. But more often than not, I agree with you, is that you'll hear a read and you'll go, oh, now I understand why I didn't get that job. Is that this guy clearly, understood the intent better behind the copy, or this guy clearly, had an approach that I hadn't even considered that just works better for this spot.
And or the person made it sound like they are in your head talking, and it's not. They weren't reading anything. The ones that are getting those national spots, they are really quite good often, and I learn a ton from taping those and writing out the text and practicing, because that's what people are buying. So that's something that I like to try to do, is practice to do the things that people are buying on national television.
Yeah. I think it was you that said earlier, or someone said earlier, that often watching TV now, I'm more entertained by the commercials than I am by the actual shows themselves. And I find myself, listening to a great spot that, Tim Allen is narrated, or
the Michigan spots. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or, anything that's done by Jeff Bridges. and I'll be repeating, every time there's a line in the copy, I'll be repeating it back and trying to match the cadence and the intonations. And, there's a reason why Jeff Bridges gets paid, $100,000 to voice those Energizer spots, because he's really good at it.
My wife is used to me now using the DVR and backing up and listening to the ad 2 or 3 times because it was so good. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I had one of those revelatory experiences. I had an audition for that Leave commercial that the guy gets out of bed and he has to go to his coffee shop and make the coffee and everything. Yeah. And I thought I did a pretty good job with the audition. Then I watched the commercial and I listened to the guy do the voiceover, and it was like, oh, there's a transition in there that I just missed.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a shift in focus. And it was so subtle, but it worked so well. And it was like, oh, I missed it. I missed that transition.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
There's nothing more humbling than hearing something on the radio or on TV that you auditioned for and didn't win.
The one that I hear most often recently is for Hep C for baby boomers.
Yes. Yeah, I know that spot.
I read that spot and I thought, oh my God, I was so good. But then when I listen to the guy thing, and it's like, oh God, that guy killed that spot.
Well, there's the other thing too, where you're not only competing with other men, you're competing with women. I can't tell you how many auditions I've gotten for national spots where they went with a woman instead of a man.
Yeah.
Only as it should be, right, Bev?
I mean, look who's doing all the car commercials now, for crying out loud.
Yeah, a lot of them are women. Absolutely.
That's because we're buying cars now. They don't have to talk to your significant other, father, whatever.
I suspect, Bev, that women have been buying cars for a long time. It's taken a long time for the advertising community to catch up to that fact.
Plus, she just bought a new car.
That's right.
Is that a function of fashion or Me Too awareness, or is it a function of the casting folks getting younger?
I think it's a function that women have. I would rather listen to a woman if I'm buying something. Their voices sound amazing, especially the really good talent like Bev.
That was a subject that we had on another webinar.
I'm serious, by the way.
Talking about whether it was a societal thing or whether it was, just a trend or something like that. And I really don't know what that answer is, except the fact that it's up to the client to get what they want. So if they said, we think we'd prefer like maybe a sexy woman's voice for this commercial instead of, the Matthew McConaughey or something like that. Sorry, I picked on him again. It's up to what the client wants, and you have no control over that.
But if that woman's voice gets lost in the mix through no fault of her own, it's just the frequencies of her voice and the way that they're mixing it, isn't the whole message lost?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, those old Cadillac commercials where they were riding the Cadillacs down in the city streets, and there was that woman that was doing the voiceover for those, and it was a higher pitched kind of voice and a very quiet kind of voice, and it was getting a little bit lost in the mix. They've changed that campaign a little bit.
I honestly think it does go back to the fact, and I said it in a joking way, that women are buying cars. Back in the day, women didn't buy the cars. The husband went out to work, the woman stayed home with the children, and it was the man who walked in and dumped the sales rep to buy the car. More and more, women are out in the workforce. They're buying cars because they need them for children, taxing them back and forth, but they're the ones that are needing it, and they're listening to themselves. Oh, wow, that's what I do every day. And when it comes from a woman, they're listening more. I think that's maybe where it started. Where it's turning into now, I'm not too sure. I think it's a combination of the younger, possibly the softer voice, or without the big Ford truck type of voice. Even the men, they're more laid back, talking about the luxury cars and whatnot. It's just more of a laid back read. But I'm hearing men and women out there.
Yeah, Bev, truly that that Dennis Leary Ford F-150 read that was so in vogue for so long is really going away, and it's more the John Hamm, really very understated, quiet read that seems to be being cast on a more frequent basis now.
Yeah, and we were talking about, what these things are geared toward, but I did a panel discussion earlier today in New York City, and with a couple of casting people, and they were saying that what we have to be thinking about, voice artists have to be thinking out in the casting arena anyway, is the millennials, because they're the ones who are buying the products, they're the ones who are coming up, and they're the ones that are doing the casting.
They're doing the hiring too.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, they're buyers and consumers and bosses.
Patricia asks, what about having women reading technical or scientific spots? Do we think that the women's voices are more intelligible, or is there something about a woman's delivery perhaps that makes a scientific or technical spot more understandable?
I could almost speak from experience from that. My wife is a scientist, and she's also a teacher for that matter. And I think that more now than ever, you're seeing a lot more. Even to Bev's point, you see a lot more women, not only in the professional world, in the scientific world, and they're the way they communicate in complex matter such as scientific, verbiage, if you will. I think it comes a lot, to me, it comes along a lot clearer.
Just while we have a moment here, it's 9:32. Just want to give a quick reminder, those of you who have joined us just in the last 20 minutes or so, please keep yourself muted if you can, unless you're actively participating in the conversation. Don't want to dissuade you from your participation. Absolutely. Please unmute yourself and contribute in any way that you see fit. But if you keep yourself muted, it means we have a lot less problems with background noises and echo if you do. Also, a little bit of blatant self-promotion is that I am hosting a webinar this coming Wednesday night where Kate McClanahan, who's just a fantastic coach out of Los Angeles, is going to be doing a 90-minute webinar on how to create original character voices for animation and games. And if you have more interest in that, you can private message me, and I can send you a link with more information. Who else has got a question for us tonight? Commercial work. Had some really good questions so far tonight.
Hey, Graham, this is Eric Hernandez.
Hello, Eric.
Hi, how you doing today?
Awesome. How are you?
I am doing really good. Going back to what you and I believe it was Bradley, y'all gave that little tip about watching the commercial and writing down the script and then trying to make the delivery. Are you trying to match that delivery, or are you trying to create your own that has the same flow?
That's a great question, and I think at first you should try to just match that delivery. Obviously, you're not doing a voice match, but I learned it from somebody else, and they called it tape and ape. And
okay,
tape and ape.
Yeah, if you take your phone out, you can just tape the audio really quickly, and then transcribe the text, and then later you can just drop the audio in. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just there to give you a template of how you need to sound.
Gotcha.
And just imitate that pace, the feel, the flow, I forget who said it, but recognizing the turn in the script somewhere and the affection in your voice, and imitate it. And then that's what I'm talking about, is imitating what you hear, the pace and the tone and the feel, because that's what they're buying. That's what they bought and put out there for everybody to hear. So that's how I use it. And I still use it. I did it my first year. I just did it all the time, but I still do it now when I really want to you know, when I hear the ad that I didn't win, I tape that thing and write it down and then go to my studio and bang on it until I feel like I could do it.
Well, that's a good tip. I really appreciate the insight. As the new person that's come on, I'm looking for every way to come up with a plan to, you know, kind of self-direct, and that's a good tip. I do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Self-direction's not easy. It's the thing that makes all of us the most crazy is, how do I direct myself at home all alone in my booth and come up with winning auditions? It's not easy. It's not easy at all.
Yeah. Bradley, one more question. How do you know you hit it?
How do I know I hit when I'm doing tape and ape?
Right.
It's, for me, it's just whether I'm doing that or if I'm doing a sound alike. Like I get paid to do Morgan Freeman reads or James Earl Jones, but I can just hear it in my head, and if it sounds like it in my head, then
you got it.
Then I got it. And sometimes I'll run it by people and ask them what they think. Or I have John Ciano, he's a buddy of mine, and I'll send him something and I'll say, hey, what do you think of this? Is this crap or is this good? And he'll tell me. He'll tell me if it's good or he'll tell me if it's crap. So
all right, cool. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
It's never crap. Don't worry about it.
Sorry, just making a couple of notes here.
Hey, Graham, I come at this from a multi-pronged thing. I've been a copywriter and a production director and talent and casted people. And I always wished that I had the budget to be able to, because in the end, the idea is to sell soap, whatever that is. I always wanted to have the budget to do the spots, male and female, and see which one moves the needle of sales. Because that really, in the end, it's hard to gauge branding and imaging, but as far as sales, I always wanted to A/B test and see, do a great female read, do a great male read, and see which one works the best.
Haley just gave us a fantastic tip, and Haley says that they turn on subtitles. You know how most of our TVs now have the option of turning on, you know, English language or Spanish language subtitles. And she says that turning on subtitles is like reading the script and hearing the actor's interpretation all at the same time. That is a great tip. Thank you so much for that, Haley. Who else has got a question for us tonight? We're talking about commercial work. Anything to do with commercials, getting commercial work, performance questions with regards to commercial work. Just unmuting a few people that have joined us just in the past few minutes. Welcome. Glad that you're here.
Yeah, I have a quick question about stuff for people that have booked more work than I have, and that is if you don't contact the casting director or the voice buyer and you did a national spot, you're clear if you find it online on YouTube, you're okay to grab it and share it. Generally speaking, is that true?
If it's on YouTube and if therefore it's released into the public domain,
yeah.
I mean, technically, in order for you to use, you know, any piece of copy like that or any performance, you technically need to have the right to do so from your client. Have I ever heard of a voice actor ever being sanctioned for using a clip that's publicly available on YouTube? Never, not once.
Good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Graham. Hi, everyone. I've got a comment on that one. I know someone who did have a spot that they put on their own site. The only objection was they had downloaded the spot and hosted it on their own website. All the client said was just link to ours. Don't rip it and put it back up. So putting an embedded link on your own website to the client's posting of the video, the ad, whatever it is much safer because they still retain ownership. No one's taken it. It's just something that particular client said. So yeah, please link to it, but don't take it and put it on your own website.
Yep, that's what I do. Thanks. Thanks a lot, Peter.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Peter Bishop, the president of World Voices. Peter, thank you for joining us tonight.
No problem.
Cheers in the background.
Cheer! Yay! Go World Voices! A question that came in from Jen Jones. Recently, I booked a spot only to discover a month later that the client has decided to not go through with it. Thus, I didn't get paid my usage fee, only the session fee. And the same thing happened to a friend of mine within the past month, Jen Jones says. Is this becoming more common? Are we seeing spots going to production that end up not being aired? Has anyone run across a similar scenario in the recent past?
My question would be, was it a union spot or a non-union spot?
Jen, was it a union spot or a non-union spot? Non-union, Jen says.
Yeah, because the union would have something to say about that. Non-union, I don't know what recourse you have.
But even in the case of it being a union spot, I mean, what recourse would there be? The actor's getting paid the session fee, and if they decided not to use it, then there's no usage fee applicable.
I'm not real sure about that. There may be a penalty involved of some sort. You may be owed some money for it not being in use, but that kind of thing does happen all the time where, you know, something has been actually, you know, recorded, laid down, produced, edited and all that kind of stuff, and then they've just changed their mind.
If you have an agent, speak to them.
Good point, Bev. Jen, if the spot came to you through an agent, then let them go back and figure out what it was that happened.
It would also probably in the fine print of your contract there would be something in legalese stating something about usage fees, or you know, maybe they owe you more money if they cancel the project. But yeah, that would be in the contract that you signed with the client.
Anybody else have a question for us? Talking about commercial work tonight.
Hi, this is Sarah again.
I love your voice, Sarah. You could just talk to me all night long.
Thank you so much. That's so kind of you. I was just wondering, where should I look for commercial projects to audition for?
Are you a union talent or a non-union talent, Sarah?
I'm a non-union talent.
Mm-hmm. The first place that I typically send people to, and you know, I'm a big believer in fishing where the fish are, and that is go and try some of the online casting sites. There are, you know, dozens and dozens of commercial jobs being posted to voice123.com on a daily basis, and you know, voice123.com, voices.com, Badalgo.com, which is based out of Europe, but based out of Germany. You know, there are, you know, many online casting sites out there, some of them, you know, more reputable than others. And I'll let you do your research into that to determine which ones you want to get involved with. But between voice123.com and voices.com, they split like 95% of the online casting marketplace. So those would probably be the first two that I would suggest. But there are other ways to go about finding commercial work other than through online casting sites. And who out there has some comments on that, or has some suggestions for Sarah on where she might go to find commercial work other than online casting?
Hi, Graham. It's Bev again.
Hey, Bev.
I do a fair number of commercials through production houses.
And these production houses, did you reach out to them directly in order to get on their roster? How did that work?
Some of them I've gotten through the online casting. Some are from LinkedIn. I have one I got from Facebook simply by starting a conversation on something they posted. So they're kind of all over the place. If you look, just Google searching media production, you can find things locally in your area and, you know, touch base, drop in, have a coffee, that kind of thing. There's a lot of ways to find clients. And they may not do the national spots, but they may do a local chain of car dealerships or, you know, a restaurant or something like that that you can get regular work at.
Do you find these local production houses receptive to you reaching out to them, or is it like, oh, not another voice actor?
I guess I've been lucky. Sometimes I'll have talked to somebody who's been at that studio, or you can open that door by saying, hey, I saw somebody post that they were at your studio. I'm going to be in the area. Do you have 5 minutes for me to come in and say hi? So I've done that. And they're usually okay. Now I'm busy that day. Okay.
And are you one of these people that sends out lots of postcards and emails and that kind of stuff?
That's on my to-do list.
Okay.
I mean to.
Anybody else have any suggestions on where we can go to find commercial work as a non-union actor that's not the more typical online casting sites?
I think for a voice like yours too, there's a obviously a market with kids' toys and animation and things like that. So do you have any agent representation?
I don't have any agent representation at the moment, but that's definitely something I would be interested in.
Yeah, I would. One of the best ways to navigate that would be to connect with somebody who is with a good agent and talk to them and, you know, try to get a referral. If you have a good demo and some work behind you, that's a good way to go to get with some agent representation, is through a referral.
Thank you for your suggestion.
Thank you for the question, Sarah. Michael is asking, I'm non-union, still kind of getting started in the biz. What's the likelihood of acquiring work without yet having a demo? Who's got some thoughts on that? Is it possible to get commercial work out there without having a demo yet?
That would be tough unless you've had months and months or years of training, because that's my opinion. I would guess is you don't even get a demo unless you've had a lot of training. So
who else has got some thoughts on this? The likelihood of acquiring work without yet having a demo.
I think the demo should be, it's always your shop window. Now, whether that's a physical shop window or a website shop window, basically you're trying to sell a product and people need to know what you're selling. Now, if you can get onto sites and just reply to auditions, that's great, and that might work. But all these sites, all these casting sites will want demos on file. I don't think they'll even list you unless you put up demos. So unless you have access to a source of auditions, I think it's difficult without having something out there. And there's always that old thing about you only get one chance to make a first impression. So don't put a substandard demo out there just for the sake of having something. But I think you're setting yourself a high barrier if you're trying to get work without some form of demonstration of your capabilities and range. So even if someone can hear, okay, this is a young American male, they want to be able to answer simple questions like that, and they generally do it by listening rather than reading a description of yourself. So I think you're setting yourself a task if you haven't got any form of demo to get out there in the marketplace.
Peter, how do you feel about self-produced demos, if that's what it takes in order to, if someone can't afford to go and get a, $1,000 demo produced?
I think, to be perfectly honest, if you've got the chops and know what you're doing, self-produced demos can work. I know that's bucking the trend nowadays because there are a lot of demo producers out there, and the cost can be anything from reasonable to quite expensive. But if you can do it, I think it's possible to do it. Listen to a lot of other demos. Listen to what the marketplace wants. If you fall short of that, don't put it out there. But if you can turn around and say, well, I can put something together that sounds like that, and you do it, and it stands an A-B comparison, then yes, sure, absolutely, I believe people can do their own if they have the skills required to do it, because there's some production stuff obviously going in there. Access to music. Don't just rip music off the internet. If you're going to use it, use properly licensed music. Write your own scripts. Don't pretend that you're advertising a product that you have nothing to do with, that sort of thing. So as long as you keep it legal, straight, yeah, you can do it yourself.
Is it fair to say that it would probably be easier to produce a self-produce an e-learning demo or an audiobook demo that doesn't require nearly as much production than a commercial demo?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That would be the place to start. E-learning and audiobook. I mean, not everyone wants to get into audiobooks because it's a lot of hard work, and I'm full of admiration for people that do it full time. An e-learning demo is probably a good place to start, or even maybe a documentary narration, that sort of thing. But just be careful where you get your copy from. If you've got the ability to write it yourself, do so. But don't take someone else's copy, as in my comment with the music.
Hey, Peter?
It wouldn't really be applicable with e-learning, but yeah, e-learning would be a good place to start, I think.
I'd like to offer a counterpoint to that. And that is that Peter, you qualified it by saying if you have the chops. And I think somebody who has the technical audio wizardry chops to produce a demo that sounds professional, I think, just in my opinion, I think they're few and far between. Even people that record and do voiceover all the time, a lot of people I think would admit, well, I am willing to admit that I would never try to produce my own demo. And I know even though I'm not that J. Michael Collins level person, and probably never will be, but you can tell, I can tell when I listen to people's demos that are out there, I can tell the ones that they've created themselves. It really jumps out at me. So I would say, if you're going to try to do your own, man, have somebody who is really good listen to it and give you some input, because unless it's really beautifully done, it stands out to the casting professionals. The people are out there and they'll listen to it for 2 seconds and go, nope, circular file, done.
I think you make some very good points there, and I think they're particularly applicable to commercial. I like the counterpoint. I like your points, but there's part of me that has more faith in casting directors. They hear the voice, and sometimes an overproduced demo, they hear the production. And I think it sometimes can make them think, well, can this person do this in the studio? There's something honest about a more raw performance, maybe. Some of the demos you hear out there are absolutely wonderful works of production, but I think it showcases the producer more than it does the talent sometimes. So there are conflicting views on this.
Yep. No, I understand that.
I'm quite happy to say I'm in a minority with this. But I can understand both sides of the argument. I've heard some wonderful demos, and you also hear stories of someone landing a gig with a wonderful demo, but they can't do it in the studio. So you've got to be able to back it up as well. So
that goes back to the training. And in order to have a demo, you need to be trained so that you can produce what it is your demo says or what the casting director or the customer wants you to sound like.
Yeah, and that was part of the panel discussion that I was in this morning too, is that with more people having home studios and having to produce, deliver the voice, maybe not fully produced, but deliver the voice from your home studio, your demo has to sound like what you can deliver, rather than, slickly produced whiz bang with all the bells and whistles by somebody else.
I think this is one of those questions that could go on for it. I think there are very valid but opposite points of view. I don't know. I'm not a casting director, so what do I know? Maybe we need to pin one of those down and say, what do you look for when you're listening to voices?
Peter, I understand that you're doing something interesting tomorrow night.
Interesting, yes.
Tell us about what you're doing tomorrow night and how people can participate.
Dan and George's voiceover body shop.
Indeed.
I am the guest this coming Monday, and I think I'm going to be put on the spot about a few things, which will be fun.
So for those of you who aren't aware, Dan Leonard and George Whittam, who are the two home studio gurus to the stars in Los Angeles, have a long-running Monday night live streamed broadcast called the Voiceover Body Shop, or VOBS. And they have great guests every week. And tomorrow, Peter Bishop will be the featured guest. And for more information, you can go to vobs.tv. vobs.tv.
And they're up to 330 some episodes, I think. This is a long-running show. It's a great show. They do a wonderful job with it. And it's live to camera. And there's always that edge of something being live to camera. What's going to go wrong next?
Exactly. An episode of VOBS isn't an episode of VOBS without some technical screw up. So, and Peter, just, we're just tying things up here. We're almost out of time. Give us the 60-second overview of World Voices, because there's lots of people here on tonight's OpenMicVO who are not members of WOVO.
Oh, the 60-second overview, the elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch.
We speak for those who speak for a living. That's the easy and quick one. We're an advocacy group that support our membership with mentoring and education. We are providing a voice in the industry. We're not a union, that has to be said first of all. We're a trade association, a non-profit, to speak for members, to bring members together in a community where there's self-help, education and mentoring, outreach. We try to get along to other industries and talk about the value of employing professional VOs rather than taking Doreen from accounts because she sort of sounds all right when they're doing their internal e-learning, that sort of thing. So we speak for everyone out there, across the board, union, non-union, associates who may just have an interest in starting with VO, or fully blown pros who have been earning a living for years. Open doors to everyone who's interested.
And where can people go for more information?
world-voices.org. And
fantastic.
Information will be there.
Fantastic. Peter, thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody who is in attendance tonight. We had a good crowd. and we had some great questions. So I much appreciate your participation. Back again next Sunday night. So make sure that you check back in with us at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific next Sunday night. Until then, have a great week, work hard, and book lots of work. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Have a good night.